Okay, perfect. Well, I feel like I don't even need to introduce what a value acceleration is because you handily covered it in that introduction. But value acceleration in a nutshell, if we were to take a look at it, is again, how to make your business best in class and and I'll get to that in a little bit. You introduced me beautifully. And of course, with RFN, Ready for Next, group of companies, we have 3 distinct companies that service the public in different ways. So we have our RFN Academy. If you don't mind, I'm just going to do just a little bit of a commercial here on who the heck we are. So RFN Academy is our learning portal. It's our educational community. So it is where we send a lot of our not only advisors who want to know more and sort of brush up on the things that value acceleration entail, but also for our clients and our business owners that may want a little bit of DIY or a little bit more education as they're entering into this realm. So the Academy is where all of those great learnings live, and how we interact in a lot of ways with both of our advisor and professional communities, as well as all of the business owner communities that we work with. Our RFN advisory group, of course, is where all of us as advisors who do this type of work, that's where we reside, and that's where we have engagements with and have a very large network of advisors that do the advisory work, like our value acceleration and a variety of other things that we do with our clients. So that all falls under our advisory group and where you would engage with us one-on-one. And then RFN Cities is a very unique and exciting, and probably one of the things that gets people's ears perked up quite a bit, is because it is our program that is, if you can imagine, instead of working one-on-one with business owners, where we work on communities one-on-one. So what that means is that we have programs that are geared for economic development professionals, communities, cities, counties, states, provinces. I mean, it's international. And it is a way in which we can bring a lot of this work to the masses. So we host and we have them supported by, for example, the one that's kicking off in the beginning of July, end of June, beginning of July, is the state of Colorado, state of Denver, no, Colorado. My goodness, can you tell I'm a Canadian? I'm getting all of my cities and my states, etc., intermixed. You'll forgive me though, because I'll say sorry 1,000 times like a true Canadian does. So Colorado, the state of Colorado, is implementing a program whereby we're going to be doing multiple sessions across that state with business owners to help them understand and get them really down the path, starting down the path of value acceleration and transition readiness. Because as I go through my presentation, you'll see there's a lot of room and a lot of space to help owners prepare for, whether they're brand new entrepreneurs or seasoned entrepreneurs that are looking at the next, act after they exit or transition their business out of their business or whatever that looks like to them. And unfortunately, the amount of people that are ready or understand even the process and the steps necessary to be ready are abysmal. There's no other way to put that. The statistics are not favorable. So what we're trying to do is, because this is such a huge burning platform where we have the majority of business owners falling into the baby boomer age bracket, and we know that's a glut of entrepreneurs. And of course, that means that there's going to be an awfully large flood of exodus of businesses in the near future. And we understand that's going to have a big disruption, economic disruption to communities, to cities, to states, to provinces, et cetera. And we want to get out in front of it if we can, or at least assist in making those transitions more successful. So that's our cities program. So feel free to just, visit those websites and poke around and understand some of the work that we're doing on your own time. But today, the reason that we're here today, and we have some specific objectives, is to look at what value acceleration and value domains, as we refer to them, what those are. We're only going to be able to focus on the top 3 value drivers and the top 3 value killers. We're going to talk about that very little, just so that we can kind of wet your whistle as to if you were to go away and start thinking, are mine good? Are mine not so good? You've got a little bit of insight into what those top 3 in each of those categories are. What transition readiness actually is. What does that mean when we talk about transition readiness? And why is it so important? And then the last one is, what's the difference between value and price? And there is a big difference. So we're going to try and touch on this. I recognize we have some time constraints, but we're going to do our best and get through a few of these things and open it up to everybody at the end so that they can poke around and ask me some questions, and see if we can't give them some resources at the end. So to begin, what is value acceleration? To put it the most simply, value acceleration is taking a look at where you as a business owner, currently where your business sits as far as its current state. And we can assess that in a variety of ways, but we can take a look at where you are and eventually where you need to be. And there's a lot of work that goes into figuring out where you need to be or the ideal state of your business. And it's the bridge between. So it's assessing where you're at, where you need to go, and how exactly do we get there? Because you might be killing it in a number of categories and you might be struggling in a few. So we have a programmatic approach to dealing with that gap and helping you accelerate to that ideal state. So when we take a look at a business owner, we look at it in a very holistic way. So, and what I mean by that is that we have an understanding that there, if you could just use the analogy of three legs of a stool, which is how we refer to it as, you take away one of the legs and that stool is very unstable. It's very unsteady and it's likely to fall over if you were to try and sit on it. So when assessing any business owner's environment, their personal environment or their business environment, we take a look at optimizing the value of your business as one of these legs. So in other words, if your business has opportunities for that value acceleration work to go from where you are to where you'd like to be, which is ideally best in class, it's optimizing the value of your business, looking at and assessing the personal financial readiness of the owner. And of course, personal financial readiness is making sure that business owners have, we don't do this work, but we work collaboratively with all of the professionals in the ecosystem of a business owner, or assist you with finding the professionals that may have vacant seats around the table that should be supporting you. So when we look at personal financial readiness, it's looking at whether or not the owner has a personal financial plan. Obviously, the professional in their life, in their maybe investing or financial advising, whoever that might be, would be responsible for keeping that up to date. Making sure that the individual has an estate plan in place, not only for tax management, but for, making sure that their wishes are actually able to be fulfilled according to the laws and according to what state their business is in, not state literally, but what condition and what would need to happen to make sure that their contingency plans for their business could be enacted on successfully. When we look at the third leg of the stool, and of course, the personal financial readiness also entails a whole wealth management strategy. So if you have sorry, I'll stay there for half a second longer. If you have a financial advisor, which most people do, and I must admit, I work with a lot of owners, and I have to say that women, little plug for women business owners, we tend to be a little bit more down the path of planning, or at least have more of the ducks in a row, and more have wealth management plans or investment advisors that are, on our teams, or at least a financial plan in which we know we're working towards. When you look at the value of a business, again, we'll get to this in a little bit, but the value of a business tends to end up being a very large percentage of the wealth, the net worth and wealth of a business owner. So if you're looking at cashing in on that or harvesting some of that value, but you haven't done the personal planning to know how much do I need to sustain my lifestyle and fulfill my after business goals, as far as if I have travel, philanthropic ideas, if I have, whatever that may mean to you, and whatever financial means you need to have to fulfill those goals and dreams. If you don't know that number, or a very close, like not even a guesstimate, but an estimate of what that number needs to look like, how will you possibly know what you need to get out of your business in order for those plans to be realized or to be successful? So having an actual personal understanding of your financial needs is critical to know okay, will my business, which represents this large percentage of my net worth, be able to support those goals, or do I need a reality check and maybe realign my expectations? So then getting on to the third leg of the stool, we are dealing with what's called the life after business plan. Unfortunately, a lot of business owners have some, not like regrets, or have some, they have a letdown effect after they leave their business. It's not necessarily that they regret getting out of their business, but they don't necessarily have a, what do I do the morning after being an entrepreneur? And now I'm not. So a lot of our identity is wrapped up in our businesses. And it's true for most business owners that it's something we're very proud of. It's something we're very connected to. And when you kind of sever that connection and don't have something figured out for, what are you setting your alarm clock for the next morning, or what are you excited about waking up and now taking on in the next phase of your life, it can be quite a shock to your system. So having a life after business plan is very important to the success of transitioning out of your business. It might not necessarily assist you in building the value of your business, but it will definitely help you afterwards, not having any of those regrets if you have a life after business plan and a purpose. So it's a more of a psychological exercise than it is a financial exercise, but it's extremely important and a very important piece of the puzzle. So earlier I made reference to, the people that are around the table or within the ecosystem of a business owner, and transition planning, exit planning, value acceleration work, all of those things that we refer to, or are going to refer to in this talk, they're very synonymous with each other, and they all are very congruent with this work. But it is not a single or solo practitioner job. Not in any shape or form can this be done by one profession. So when we look at this, this represents kind of all the different professionals that may be surrounding a business owner and servicing the needs of that business owner. Value advisor, we've got ourselves planted there at 12 o'clock, but every single one of these are very integral to the success of that business owner throughout their journey. It isn't like they should all just be gathered at the end. Each of us have a part to play, and each one of us bring different skill sets and different, just even lenses. The lens that an estate planner is going to look through, or an accountant that it is going to look through, is going to be vastly different than an M&A person or a investment banking person, or like the value advisor tends to look through the lens of a buyer. So a potential person that's going to come in and scrutinize your business and say, I have a pot of money and I could buy your business, or I could buy the next one down the street, or the next one, or the next one, or the next one. So that lens is predominantly the one the value advisor looks through to see whether or not your business is as attractive as it possibly could be, and if it's a good investment of my dollars buying your business. And everybody else around the table might be proactive or reactive at different times in the life of the business owner. Every single one of them, though, is important. And we probably even have some that are missing. But these are kind of the key advisors that everybody should at some point in time have working on their behalf. So earlier, I made reference to the business owner and the value of their business representing a fairly large portion of their wealth or their net worth. And here is a typical 65-year-old when you take a look at how is their portfolio of assets divided up. So you might have and this is a pretty conservative portfolio if you were to take a look at it from an investment strategy standpoint, but regardless, you've got a 65-year-old here, you've got a bunch of different, asset classes in this pie chart that represent how they've invested their money. When you take a look at a 65-year-old business owner, it doesn't really matter either, because you can take a look at a 30-year-old business owner who probably has all their eggs in this basket versus having a big stock portfolio or a bunch of real estate or a bunch of other assets to round out the whole pie chart. But the larger a business grows, or the more money that is reinvested into the business, obviously the more slanted, or the imbalance grows even larger. So you've got a lot of business owners that have a predominant amount of their wealth tied up in their business, which just, again, confirms that planning for the liquidation or the monetization or whatever that looks like, it could literally be just as transition for an owner to become an absentee owner. But whatever that looks like as the transition or the exit for the business owner, it's a big deal. Doesn't matter how big or how small the business is, it still has a very true representation of these pie charts and how their portfolio is how it is diversified. It's unfortunately not very diversified for business owners, typically. This is just a really quick indication. I said earlier that we have especially our programs are the city's program that we're dealing with, because of having such an overweight in baby boomers being entrepreneurs and these business owners that our economies are absolutely dependent on. If you imagine that pig in the python moving its way through the pit, or moving its way through the python, we have all this glut of baby boomers that actually are going to be exiting their businesses at relatively the same time. So fantastic if we have a bunch of millennials and centennials that are saying, hey, you know what, pick me, I'll take over that business. It's unfortunately going to be a buyer's market, because if we have a ton of businesses go on the market at the exact same time, no different than a ton of houses on the same street, what do buyers do? They go and they look at which ones are the most attractive, that have all of the features and all of the updates and all of the latest technology and all of the greatest stuff on the nicest streets. And that's where they put their money down. So again, it's just a visual to help people understand that the number of baby boomers that are looking at exiting in the near future are substantially greater than, and control a lot of the wealth in our communities that we want to preserve and make sure, from a larger perspective, make sure don't just pack up and leave some of our smaller communities or even our cities without those resources and without that tax base and without all of those, opportunities for employment. So moving on, talking about value drivers and value killers, and what are they and why do they matter? Well, our wonderful depiction there on the left of the beautiful porcelain throne is to depict the value killers are like throwing good money down the toilet. And of course, when you feed something like a plant, it grows. So we view value killers and value drivers in a way that we want to make sure that you feed the things, in other words, invest in the things that are likely to grow the value of your company or make your company bigger and better and more efficient and more attractive, and either stop or at least reduce the money that you're putting into, if at all possible, into the things that are not serving you well, that are not serving your business well, and are not driving any value. They could very well be harming the value of your company also. They may not just not be driving value, but they may be actually hurting the value of your company. So when we talk about what are the top 3 value drivers, hang on 1 second here. I've lost my connection to my presentation. 2 seconds. So value drivers, if we look at those, there's a few things that we know are the most attractive to a buyer. If we continue to have that lens on, I know that most of us are on the call are entrepreneurs and owners of our businesses, and it's hard to take that hat off. But if you look at it through the lens of a buyer, recurring income, if you could just have income that's going to continually come in no matter what you do, obviously, subscription type of income, contract income, repeat business, things that you can say, hey, I've got this locked down and this amount of our customers are either recurring or they're locked in for the next 2 years, or we've got this many subscribers and this is how our business is growing, and we increase subscription bases by 10, 20, 30% per year. That's music to a buyer's ear. So if you have an opportunity to increase or create consistent revenue, it's going to drive the value of your business faster than other less attractive endeavors. So you might think that going and building the newest, latest machine or having a really cool product without testing the market to find out if it's going to bring in the significant amount of growth that you need to overcome the cost of either the operating costs or the expense of marketing it or the test marketing of it, you may find yourself with a value killer versus a value driver. So again, recurring income is a fantastic value driver. Another one is a niche market. So if you can find yourself in a market that has a lot of barriers to enter, you've got an opportunity because of regulation, or you've got geographical barriers to entry for competitors. If you have a niche product that commands an audience, that sets you apart. So you've got a lot of things in a niche market that include your brand that have a much higher value than if you're trying to, say, outsell your competitor. So you've got the exact same product or the exact same service, and it's really dog eat dog. If you've got something that stands apart from the crowd in a niche market, that is a value driver. Diversification, which is the reverse of saying concentration, is also a huge value driver. There's many of them, but I'm picking the top three here. So diversification, meaning that you're not dependent on one specific, again, service to one specific end user or industry. If you have a little bit wider scope where you're not the jack of all trades, but you're definitely able to expand your business and have no more than, say, 10% maximum of your business servicing one client or one industry, you're ahead of the game. So we've dealt with clients before that when we look at the concentration of clientele, in other words, who are they serving? And we find out that their biggest client may represent, 30, 40, 50. In one case, we had one that was 80% of all of their sales in a year. That is a huge value killer. It could be a value driver, but because of the overconcentration with that one industry, that one client, imagine that client, something happens. You may have a fantastic relationship with them, but all of a sudden somebody in a position of authority leaves, or the owner transitions it to somebody else, or whatever that might look like. Whatever might disrupt that relationship can have an immediate negative impact on your business. So diversification of your clients and your product is a win. That's a value driver. Value killers almost, you just look at the antonym to the value drivers, except instead of clients, like obviously we just said that a value killer would be over concentration in any one area of clientele. It also goes to say that if you have an over dependence or over concentration of owner, like if you've got an owner dependent business, it is a huge value killer. So what we always try to advise our owners is take a vacation. I mean that, like literally, can you take a vacation and your business run smoothly and successfully in your absence? Does everybody have to run everything past you? Does every decision need to be stamped by you in order to be implemented? Do people have authority within your company to act in your absence? Do they have the autonomy to make decisions? Do they run their own P&Ls? Do they have, the opportunity, again, in your absence to run the business the way you would, and you trust them, and you can have this extended absence, or again, leave them with the reins, if you would. If not, and if asking an owner the questions that would lead us to hear the answer, no, my business depends on me. That's a huge value killer. Because obviously the next person in the door that's going to own this business doesn't want to have a lifelong relationship with that owner. And they want to know that when they step in, it's already a well-oiled machine, that this is something that can stand on its own and continue to work, even if that owner is absent. Another value killer, other than owner dependence, is no succession planning. And by succession planning, I don't mean transition planning. They are definitely different. So you have a COO, you've got a CFO, you've got a CEO, you've got somebody that's, maybe head of marketing, head of HR, who knows how large your business is. It could be 5 people, it could be 500 people. But when you have people that are running departments, they're the head of something, and you have absolutely no idea as to who the next person to step into their shoes would be, and you have no training and none of this kind of succession planning done for internally your leaders and your senior leaders, that causes a lot of discomfort and indigestion in the buyer's eyes, because what they are buying is what you've built, including your people assets. So your people stay typically after the owner exits. And if done well, there's stay bonuses, there's a lot of things that can happen to make your staff want to stay and to be a part of the next phase of this business. Done poorly, you could have a mass exodus. It could be that you're going to lose a lot of that knowledge and experience, and it walks out the door when the owner transitions, or even prior to, once they find out. That's a huge concern for a lot of owners, is I don't want to tell any of my staff that I'm contemplating exiting. It's not a surprise to anybody that at some point in time, an owner's going to exit, including if they were to walk out the door and get hit by a bus, including if they were one of the very unfortunate individuals that contracts COVID and succumbs to it, or any other ailment. I mean, there's certainly more out there that used to, concern us more than the most recent pandemic. But the reality is that you cannot prevent some of those things from happening. You can only plan around them. And I think that staff would be more at ease to know you've got a plan in place than have no idea what's going to happen if something were to happen to you. So no succession planning, owner dependence, and then the third one would be really poor processes and financial controls. So when we go in and we analyze and we assess a business and we look at, all right, you've got great operational processes, let's test that. We go in and we take a look and we find out, everybody knows exactly how to do it, but there is no SOP. Like, there's no standard operating procedures manual. There's no actual written processes. There's no backup of documentation or things that would be necessary for somebody off the street to come in, obviously somebody that's qualified to step into one of these positions, but somebody to come in and easily be able to pick up and see where you've been, where you're going, what your strategy is. And again, not just with operational strategy, but also financial strategy. And if you don't have good, solid financials, you're not going to pass due diligence. Fun fact, businesses that go to market, about 20% of them are successful in being sold. So that might be because they were woefully underprepared for what that would look like, but also it's typically because once they start to go through due diligence, the things that they had gold stars next to, that they had in good keeping, truly fell apart once the new buyer and their team started to pick them apart. So there are 3 basic ways. Of course, we have limited time, and I'm so excited about my topic. I'm already way behind, but I promise I won't make you run late. I can speed up. I can talk very, very quickly. But when we're looking at 3 ways to increase enterprise value, you can increase your earnings, you can reduce your risk, which should always be done in tandem, and you can position yourself as best in class. Well, how do you go about doing that? Whoops, I hit the button. What we talk about is increasing earnings. It's really exciting for people to go out and launch new products and launch new services and bring in top line dollars. But if those top line dollars are eaten up by all the operating costs and everything that goes to support that top line revenue, you're really no further ahead. paying attention to your margins, paying attention to your expenses are a big piece of that pie. So making sure that you've got your marketing reach really finely tuned and that you're on top of that, but then also driving, like from a sales position, driving sales is key to revenue generation, but also making sure that you follow that money all the way through the P&L and the balance sheet to make sure that it's sticking and that your margins are good and your net revenue is actually showing the reward to all of that effort. Reducing risk is not easy, but it is one of the most valuable things that you can do in a company. So taking a look and doing a risk reduction strategy and going through your company and seeing what kind of risks you could be mitigating or getting rid of is very, very rewarding. We can't, again, get into these in too great a detail, but positioning yourself as best in class, everybody's like, well, I think I'm best in class. My marketing says that I'm best in class. I'm amazing. We actually have assessments that we can do that actually take a look at businesses in an industry sold internationally and what they were sold for. And we have a lot of data that comes from the private equity marketplace, and private equity tends to be the highest scrutiny, like the most intense scrutiny on the value of a business and on whether or not a business is operating, because they want to get in and they want to make a profit. So if a private equity firm comes in and wants to be a part of your company, they're going to get it from where it is to operational excellence in as short a period as they possibly can, and then potentially divest themselves of that ownership. They're going to move it on because it's just a portfolio holding for them. So when you're looking at best in class, we actually do operational assessments based on that type of scrutiny and that due diligence so that we can score businesses in every industry against other businesses and see whether or not you are A, B, C, D in class. So there are ways to get yourself, again, not just with value acceleration, but with some DIY work that can be done. So our business owner clients, no matter where they are, begin somewhere. And we firmly believe that we need to meet you where you are. What that means is you might be exploring, you might be pivoting or triggering as far as where you are in the stages of ownership and transition mindedness. Explorers in our world, as we categorize them, are people that are sniffing around and wondering, what should I do? What should I be doing? How do I get myself organized so that I am transition ready? Because I hear it's important. Transition businesses, transition ready businesses garner the best and highest value because they are waiting for somebody to knock on their door. They're already operating at peak efficiency, optimal, and they're ready for somebody to knock on their door and say, I have a blank check and I'd like to buy you. What's your number? So people that are in that exploring phase are just wanting to know, how do I get there? Where should I start looking? Where should I start researching? What should I be thinking of doing? Pivoters, which is where we do the majority of our work, are people that are now looking at it in a very intentional way and wanting to take value acceleration steps to get from where they are to where they need to be prior to this triggering event. Triggering people are somebody knocked on my door and they call us and say, okay, you told me I should have 2, 3, 4 years in advance of leaving to get my business ready to go. And of course, I didn't listen. And now somebody has knocked on my door and offered me something and I don't know what to do with it next. So triggerers are those people that are probably under 2 years to actually the sale of their business. And it might not just be because they've got somebody that's interested in it, but it may very well be because they're sick or they're getting a divorce or they died. Like that business as a triggering event. We have a bunch of what we have 8, so not a bunch, but we have 8 value acceleration sprints that we take owners through. I'm not going to take you through all of them. I'm going to fast forward through the slides that go into depth. We have a lot of this information for those that are interested. You're welcome to go to our website. They are explained in fuller detail, and we have tons of resources that we can send out to people so that they can see what these are. But the reason why they're structured this way, there's 8 of them, and they're done over a 90-day period of time, each one of them. And they're extremely intentional because they're built on, it's like building a house. You start with your foundation. So we've got our discovery process, which is our foundational entry into any business so that we better understand the lay of the land, all of the people and what the goals are and what the environment is. And then from there, we start to build into making it best in class. And each one of these, and you can see risk is very near the beginning. Rapid risk reduction is that 90-day sprint. And we believe that reducing the risk before you start building more and more and more layers on top of it is key to the success. So you're not building a house of cards. So I was going to take you into, kind of a little bit more detail in all of these different frameworks, but I think, are we going to share the slides to this presentation, Barbara?
We can, if you'd like to, Cindy. It's really up to you whether you'd like to share the slides or not.
Absolutely. Because some of these slides, although they don't have a ton of information on them, will kind of be a reminder of, oh, I heard that, or I saw that, and maybe I'd like to dig into that. So we've got these 8 sprints that we do with business owners to help them in each one of those categories to become best in class, because you can't just have one thing be a shining gold star in your business and all the rest of the house falling apart. Like you take them into the living room and say, look at my living, like if you're selling your house, right? Like my living room is beautiful. Don't look at the bathroom. The plumbing doesn't work. Or don't look at the foundation because it's crumbling around, and it's about to fall over, or I've got an infestation of termites. You actually have to have all of these value drivers or these, core things in good shape. And that's why each one of our sprints focuses on those predominant 8 foundational value drivers. So what do business owners get out of value acceleration work? I've probably talked around it, but to summarize it, you've got the ability to reduce or eliminate the value, wealth, and profitability gaps. I always stumble on that sentence because at the very beginning, it looks like we want to reduce or eliminate the value and the wealth of an individual. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the gaps. So we want to close those gaps. We want to increase value, increase wealth, increase profit. But where we meet a client and where we leave a client, we close that gap. So the value acceleration helps and assists and is intentional about that. It lowers, obviously, their business. I shouldn't say obviously, but it does lower their business and their personal financial risk, because we're de-risking as we go along. We're either increasing their wealth, their cash flow, we're de-risking, and of course, we're increasing the value of their business. So when it is monetized, they've got a larger pool, a now liquid pool of assets to be able to move off into their life after business and enjoy. We increase the quality of the transition readiness. Transition readiness, we're able to assess with, we've got a kind of a quick snapshot that we can send out a questionnaire to individuals that are business owners that they can send back, and we can see where their mindset is at or where their business is at from their perspective as to whether or not they would consider themselves transition ready. Most are not. In fact, about 10% or less are even anywhere close to being transition ready. It makes you more sustainable and you have more profitable growth. You've got maximum transferable enterprise value instead of I'll take what I can get because I don't look very good in this one area and this is a little bit, needing some love and attention. You've also got improved operating and capital efficiencies. Because we're talking about those processes, we're talking about productivity and efficiencies, we're automatically going in and we're going to do that feed starve analysis. What should we be putting money into and what should we stop putting money into? Because the things that are really profitable, we want to do more of. The things that are going to drive better, more productive, more profitable business is where we're going to focus the time and attention. So it's going to improve your capital efficiencies. It'll improve your customer, your supplier, your employee relations, because those are all things that we look at in an assessment of a company. Like, what is your culture? Are your people happy? Do you treat them well? Are they all, is it a turnstile? Do you have 45 to 50% turnover? Or are all of your people so in love with working for your company that they never leave? So there's a lot of value to the one, as I described it, versus the other, as you can imagine, because turnover is expensive. Diversify your transition options. One of the things that is abundantly clear, and there's tons of research out there supporting this, is that business owners really do not fully understand all of the options that are available to them when they look at transitioning their business, whether it's fully or partially. And our job is to make sure that they understand there's probably 10 different ways that they can look at a transition, and explaining the pros and cons of each, finding out what matters most to them, meeting them where that is, and then supplying them with all of the options that will help them be successful with that choice. Because a lot of people think I either have to transition it to somebody internally, family or otherwise, management, family, whatever that might look like, or I have to sell to my competitor. And those are really the two that most people identify with quickest. And there are many hybrids, and there are many more options out there that they should be considering and looking at and weighing the pros and cons of before just ultimately putting that sign up and saying, okay, I'm for sale, or picking somebody internally that may not want to be an entrepreneur, or may not want to be, or may not be suitable to own a business, and saying that this is my succession plan or my transition plan. Increasing the probability of success for future transactions. Well, we've got some serial entrepreneurs that we work with. So of course, working with one owner and helping them through a successful transition by doing this type of work, when they take that wealth and possibly reinvest it into the next endeavor, they will be better at it. They will know and create better opportunities for their future transactions, or for their future business ownership. And then improving access to capital markets and lowering the cost of capital. The better and more attractive you are, the bank that is going to bankroll the buyer is going to look at you and go, oh yes, we can help you buy this business. Once now we've done our due diligence, we can see it's stable, it's successful, it's got, further opportunities, et cetera, et cetera. So you'll have more to choose from as far as, the bankers and investment companies that you want to engage with, and you'll have better, more attractive rates. So our programs provide for these very three crucial elements. Clarity. Every business owner should have clarity and understand what their business means to them, and how that forms part of their wealth planning. And of course, it should go without saying that it should be front of mind what their path is, and it goes beyond just analysis and insights. It should be on the very first, the list of deliverables. It should be first on the list that we look to, is to provide clarity to the owners, to make sense of their path. And then liquidity, of course, that's wealth creation and protection. And it should be front of mind as well, understanding exactly what they're, what the owner identifies as being the liquidity that they need, and managing what matters most to them, which brings on legacy. So not every single business owner doesn't put dollar value at the top of their priorities, whereby legacy may very well be at the top of their list. So understanding that and trying to help them get to that end goal as attractively as possible and as profitably as possible is the work that we do. And without understanding that, or without, clarity and moving forward on a goal that we don't fully understand, is literally what we equate to guessing. So without clarity, you're just guessing. The value versus price, and this is where I'm going to cut myself off here, is the one thing that I want to make sure that I touch on. Is you can have a business valuator come in and tell you, this is the value of your business. Here's how much it is worth on this day with all of these other circumstances that I'm looking at. And then a potential buyer comes in, they start to do their due diligence, and they look at this valuation, and you say, my business is worth $5 million. My business is worth $500 million. And that's what the valuator said it was. But the market tells you what the actual price of your business is, and how a buyer is going to value that business is very different than what a valuator looks at. And so that due diligence process is going to start putting little X's next to things that your valuator said, oh yeah, you're great at this, you're great at this, and against market comps, this is good, this is good, this is good. And then depending on what best in class and M&A advisors look at, and again, buyers look at, it may very well start knocking down what the price is versus what you thought the value was. So I'm at the end, and I wanted this to be the last slide that we saw. we have a little promo for everybody. So if any of the business owners that are on this call are interested in finding out a little bit more about how to harvest the value of your business, we have a course that is offered to business owners at large, but we've got a little discount for those that are attending or that are going to see this replay because they've registered for it. So our How to Harvest the Value of Your Business course is through our Academy platform. It's regularly $349. It's got 52 lessons and it's an hour and a half. So although they're 52 lessons, they're bite-sized. So you can get through them really easily in little snippets, but it's very, very rich in content. And it's extremely helpful if you're looking at exactly what we talked about today. How do I start down the path of making my business not only more valuable, but best in class? So it'll go into more detail than I was able to do today. And you've got a bit of a discount there. And we've got a lot of other things. There's a lot of free resource on that Academy, and there's information sessions, and there's a community and all sorts of good stuff. So feel free to poke around in there and just take a tour. I want to say thank you very much to Leadership Global, and of course, inviting us and inviting me to speak today. And I'm hoping that you've gotten some value out of attending. And if, again, you have any further questions, feel free to reach out to us because we do love to educate. And we believe it, well, businesses fuel our economies. So we thank you. Thank you for taking all of the risk. And